Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm truly grateful that you are here because if you are, it means you survived the solar storm, the Veterans Day solar storm. And of course, it's only Veterans Day here in the US on November 11th, but still, you survived. So we'll get back to that. We're going to talk about that event and the ripple effect that it is likely still having on all of us right now. So welcome back, everyone. And of course, welcome if you're new here. You know, YouTube's algorithm has shifted and people are getting their channels back, and the algorithm is definitely moved around. So who knows, maybe this video will reach a wider audience as a result. Either way, welcome to this Scorpio new moon forecast where we go over the main astrological themes for the, in this case, first half of the lunar quarter with our Scorpio new moon that actually already happened as of this recording. So it is the 20th of November, 2025. The new moon in Western astrology at 28 to 29 degrees Scorpio occurred pretty early this morning, about 1:30, 1:45 a.m. Of course, we'll look at the chart if you are looking at the screen. If not, I'll be dictating it all to you anyway, and you're free to just listen to me give this transmission. So, of course, I would have, and I did actually plan to have this out before the new moon, but life happens as it does, and rest really needed to fall in somewhere. And as much as I love doing the astrology, doing these transmissions, making them my offering that is, free to the public, this is a non-monetized channel. This is to stay up on the new and full moons as we go through life. Something had to give, and unfortunately, it was the recording of this transmission. And in retrospect, now that I'm recording it, it's always the case that this is exactly the right timing for me to give this transmission. Had I recorded this when I intended to, which was the Sunday of last week, it would not have, the aspects that I'm going to share with you would not have come about. And a big part of that actually is the revelation, at least to me, or reminder about the particular starseed marking for this degree of Scorpio and how it is connected to the Heyoka role or the sacred clown archetype. And if you are looking at the screen, then you see I do have an image put up. This is somebody's personal rendering, somebody's personal painting of Heyoka, a Lakota Heyoka, and their connection to the Thunder Beings, which is a huge part of the role as a Heyoka or a sacred clown in the Lakota. The Lakota tribe is the connection to the Thunder Beings. So, in an effort not to get too rambly or off topic, let me just let you know right now the things we're going to talk about in this transmission. Obviously, the new moon in Scorpio and the astrological themes for the next 2 weeks leading up to our next full moon, which will be early December. But we're going to talk, like I said, about the recent solar activity and the ramifications, the ripple effect, like I said, the fact that it is still bouncing around, and share a few resources if you're unfamiliar with solar weather and what it means, what all of the scientific and objective information looks like, how to interpret it, right? Some of you that have been with me for a while or just do your own research, this is old news to you, but it's always good to review and compare notes, right? That everybody's having different experiences, but I would venture to guess that those who are listening right now, much like myself, are processing still the impact of that intense solar activity and solar storm activity that really peaked around the 13th and 14th, which was late last week, the Thursday into Friday of last week. I have been processing what I'm assuming is some measure of viral load, I would say, as a result of being exposed to an intense level of radiation that is made its way all the way to the ground level here on Earth as a result of that solar weather. And so uh, certainly in my personal orbit and in my work environment, my actual in real life work with people, I know for a fact that the viral load has been impacting people, right? There are headaches, there are joint pains, systemic inflammation, migraines, and then people just getting, pretty significant respiratory infections, coughs, you name it. Of course, here in the Northern Hemisphere, at least where I'm at in North Central PA, the weather really shifted pretty drastically. Not surprising with intense geomagnetic disturbance, right? The sun is really what is driving all of the weather and the climate. And so when we get bombarded with high energy particles coming into our magnetosphere and our ionosphere and down to the ground level, of course, the weather is going to respond to that. So I know for where I'm at, it got very windy and dry. And if you're any type of student or have any interest in things like Chinese medicine, for instance, then you know that when the wind kicks up, it also kicks up your internal fire or your inflammation. And so that has been, things like migraines, things like joint pain, and any type of internal disruption where your inflammation is kicked up has been pretty consistent, including within myself. It's been a pretty rough week, I have to say, which is, again, why I haven't really done this transmission until now. But we're still in the new moon phase. It just happened. We have this window of 2 to 3 days while we're in the new moon phase to really pull it together, get a sense of what our intentions are for this next lunar cycle, and then, plant those seeds, right? And nurture them, cultivate them, keep an eye out for things that need to change in the environment, what we can add, what we can take away. And then when we get to our full moon, as with all full moons, our purpose is clarified. There's a sense of fulfillment and illumination. And then we'll talk way more about how to get on the other side of this lunar cycle. So, like I said, we're going to talk about the solar weather a little bit more. I'm going to show you some stuff. We're going to talk about the Heyoka and the connection to the starseed marking for Alpha Centauri, show you a little bit of the constellation Centaurus, and get into a little bit of what that actually represents. That way, if you are in fact a starseed from Alpha Centauri, they are not common. And just like a Heyoka or a sacred clown is not common. It's not something you can just designate for yourself and be like, I'm a Heyoka. As much as people would like to think that, it's usually not how it works. Talk a little bit wider about the starseed implications of the astrology of right now, because it's not just the Alpha Centauri area that is being lit up not only by the new moon right now, but a retrograde Mercury. Of course, we can't go on without talking about all of the retrogrades that are happening, right? Jupiter stationed retrograde in Cancer, and it'll be retrograde until March. That was actually on the 11th when we got the X5 solar flare. Interesting. Mercury is currently in retrograde. It has moved back into Scorpio, and lo and behold, it is conjunct the sun today at the new moon. So talk about trickster energy going right back down the rabbit hole in its retrograde back into Scorpio. Whew, boy. And Saturn's retrograde, Uranus is retrograde, Neptune is retrograde, Chiron is retrograde, asteroid Ceres retrograde. What else am I missing? Black Moon Lilith is also conjunct this new moon in Scorpio. Well, all of this Scorpio energy, late Scorpio, is opposite the Pleiades, so which is where Uranus is. So all of this energy of the new moon and Mercury and even Black Moon Lilith and late Scorpio, all connected to this Heyoka vibe, all connected to Alpha Centauri. It's all opposite Uranus, which is sitting smack dab in the Pleiades star cluster. So lots of Pleiadian starseeds out there. They're very common. We're kind of all over the place. Not a ton of Alpha Centauri starseeds, lots of healers, lots of nature-loving, mystical Pleiadian people out there, but not a lot of Heyoka or Sacred Clown. Now, that doesn't mean that we cannot cultivate that Heyoka or Sacred Clown archetype for ourselves. And that's really where I'd like to focus this energy, or this transmission, I should say. But for myself, certainly the energy of Heyoka. Now, I will say on a personal level, I do have 29 degrees Scorpio in my draconic chart. It is the chart of your oversoul. I actually do a reading called the Galactic Oversoul if you ever want to look at your starseed markings of your soul before you came into incarnation. So I do have a very personal, direct connection to this. And it's not exactly something that you want to choose for yourself. People don't really... It's a role that comes with significant responsibility. And I would say that even for all the starseed connections, right? It's really not being any more special than anybody else, as much as we'd like to put ourselves up on that pedestal of being more awake or more special, or I'm a starseed. It really comes with a significant amount of responsibility, because it's a choice to have come into this incarnation with those frequencies and soul memories in tow in order to, learn something at the soul level. Our soul is here for the experience. And oftentimes it's actually quite, boy, there's so many words that can go along with this. It can just be really aggravating. It can be lonely. Lots of starseeds end up feeling like the black sheep of their family. And that got amplified quite a bit since 2020, wouldn't you say? So, I mean, there's no shortage of this energy coming through right now. And we're in a very auspicious time of not only purging, but with that, the necessity, I would say, of having to embrace this Heyoka energy for ourselves. And there are those of us who are designated by the universe, by Great Spirit, to play this role for other people, for the community. And that's what a Sacred Clown or Heyoka would do for, in this case, the Lakota tribe. The word Heyoka is very much connected to the Lakota tribe of indigenous North America. So all of the images I'm going to show you on the screen, I'm going to link in the description box. That way you can go and find where I got these images. Some of them are personal paintings. One of them is a drawing from a Lakota elder in the 19th century that I found on Wikipedia of the Heyoka. And then you can do a little bit of research for yourself. And of course, we'll look at some of the astrology of the next 2 weeks. I would say the things to look for when we get into looking at the chart in particular is just, some general overview here is that Mercury will station direct. Saturn is going to station direct on Thanksgiving Day here in the U.S., which is the 27th. By the way, that's my birthday, my solar return. So Saturn in Pisces is going to station direct. Mercury in Scorpio going to station direct on the 29th of November. So there are some things that are going to start moving forward, but you may have noticed, especially with all this retrograde energy, that it's probably been very difficult to feel like you're moving forward. And in fact, there is this lot of energy that seems to be sucking us back into the abyss. And certainly with, like I said, Mercury coming back into Scorpio in conjunction with this new moon in Scorpio, it is like tumbling right back down the rabbit hole. And I would say that it's a necessity right now to be able to look at the shadow of ourselves, right? And to work on integrating that into ourselves in order to find wholeness, right? And the Heyoka or the Sacred Clown's role is to be contrary on purpose in order to draw out the contrast, right? And that is a role that often could be considered a pariah in some cases if you live in a community or a society that doesn't value that particular role as a necessity, right? right? Like the Lakota tribe, for instance, right? They understood that role. They valued it. It was revered. It wasn't easy, but it was something that was considered necessary and valued. But it also comes with, I don't want to say a price, but it comes with a responsibility of being kind of on the outskirts in some ways, or being, being the clown. Now, a lot of the images that I've actually found of Heyoka when I just do a general search have this black and white striped theme to it. So you have the contrast of black and white, obviously. But of course, I'm just like, wow, these all look like Beetlejuice. And of course, Beetlejuice as a character from the movie, right, was certainly built off of this archetype. There's no doubt in my mind, at least. I mean, I didn't find like some sort of like thesis about this, but it's pretty obvious that that character plays this role, because that's exactly what that character does. He's consistently contrary and dragging up all of the crap, because it forces people to look at the crap within themselves, and they take all the slings and arrows in some ways in order for the healing. And that's the thing about the Heyoka, truly is a healer. And the Pleiadian starseed is also a healer, but in a completely different way than the Alpha Centaurian starseed. So let's start here. I'm gonna show you a couple things here from the space weather. I really, if you're going to, and the reason I bring this up so much is because if you're going to value astrology as an actual modality that quote unquote works, then you have to really pay attention to how all of the energy, including our own star, affects us at the bioenergetic level, the electromagnetic level. And I've made it my business over the past like 5 years plus to understand at least some basics of stellar physics, cosmology, and solar weather, basically. So, do what you can if you don't understand it to try to learn. They're great resources. Certainly suspicious observers, despite what you think about that, Ben's personality or, his end game or whatever, it's a great resource because it's very based in the facts. It's very based in data and the literature. And there's just a lot of great information. And there's a daily update all the time about what's going on. So I've learned a lot over the years from that channel that has supplemented the academic education I've had in terms of, like I said, stellar physics and cosmology. So I had like a working knowledge of the vocabulary and how things worked, and then I just built on that over time. So I just want to bring up that, and this is spaceweather.com. This is kind of the mainstream website for all things space weather, but really solar weather. So you get the solar wind, speed, and density. You get the solar flares that are current, right? You can see here that you see the sunspots and how they're, the sunspots facing us, how many there are. They'll talk often about what they look like and what their intensity is and all that stuff. I just want to bring up, number one, that you can go to this site daily and check it out. And yes, there's been a lot of information about 3i Atlas because NASA has released all of their images. And so I'm going to talk more about that when I put out the solstice forecast, which is only going to be exclusive to Catalyst membership. So that's maybe something you might want to consider if you're interested in getting that, because 3i Atlas is scheduled to make its closest approach to Earth. Now, it made its closest approach to the sun as it was on the backside of the sun, and lo and behold, the sun started erupting like crazy. Interesting. And if you really want to get into the esoteric aspects of 3i Atlas and comets in general, I do recommend, people like Rudolf Steiner or even Helena Blavatsky. It's whether or not you agree with their approach or their perspective, it definitely gives you a sense of the esoteric aspects of these types of interstellar visitors. Anyway, just to show how important this really is, regardless of what it is a spacecraft, is a comet, whatever it has had a huge impact, and we're still feeling it. Like, it's still reverberating through us personally and collectively. But what I wanted to point out here is an intense ground level event. This solar storm, this X5 solar storm, and then that had also, there was multiple coronal mass ejections from these large solar flares. We had coronal holes that were sending solar wind. I'm going to show you the KP index just to give you a visual too. If you don't remember, we got up to really strong solar storm conditions. That this was the largest in radiation. At ground level was the highest in 2 decades. And so they call it a ground level event, or a GLE, the highest, the strongest since 2006. And basically it's just talking about radiation sensors all over the place. And, the radiation like really penetrated down to even at the level of where commercial airlines are at, right? Which is really not that high up considering, the rest of the atmosphere and beyond, right? So it's coming down very close. I mean, there were auroras all the way down through the continental US and through Europe. And just to let you know, those pink auroras, they look amazing. It's not a good sign. It really isn't. I mean, it's very indicative that the magnetic field of the planet is also weakening, and along with these intense solar storms. So I want to bring this up because you may have been feeling all kinds of crazy symptoms. You may have gotten sick, migraines, all the things I talked about earlier. The increased viral load as a result of the exposure to this ground level event, and the intensity of it's starting to dissipate. But it's taken like that X class flare was on the 11th, and then we got the solar storm, and I'm going to show that real quick here. The KP index. Let me see here. I gotta share this tab. Okay, here we go. As you can see here, this was on the 13th. I mean, we're getting into KP7 almost to 8, and it has started to taper, obviously, and now it's really calming down. So you may also feel in your body that it's really calming down. So again, this is really important to have your energetic hygiene like on point, right? What minerals are you using? Are you staying hydrated? Like, what is your diet looking like? What is your sleep? And I know sleep is like so hard during this time, right? Where's your stress level? I'll tell you that I definitely was hitting a wall, and that was a big part of why it hit me so hard, is because I was like at maximum stress just because of life, responsibilities, taking care of other people, not managing my emotional state, and that started to amplify considerably, right? So it really brought out in me the need to be more, I just need to be not so much mindful, but it's like, okay, here's the next level, right? And every day for me at this point, even with the worst conditions of emotional, like, upheaval, physical discomfort, whatever's going on, mental, like erratic thoughts, and the monkey mind just going crazy, in those moments of meditation and prayer in the morning, which is like 30 minutes of solace, it's always gratitude for these experiences, right? Because again, it's the opportunity to practice. Okay, I see where my limit is. I see where my boundary is, Spirit. Thank you, because now I know where I can push on that boundary. I know now where I need to, I need to plug up these holes in my aura, right? Again, this is where the value of a really good physical healer, who's probably a Pleiadian starseed, by the way, most likely, right? A massage therapist, a Reiki healer, something like that, they're worth their weight in gold, because that's exactly what they're going to help you do. They're going to help patch up your aura. They're going to help you resonate back with that frequency of well-being. So again, like making sure you have that person around or in your life or on a schedule with, if you can, because it's really important in order to stay balanced right now. So I'm just showing you these things. It's really important to understand this because it's how astrology works too, right? You're talking about bodies in our solar system and in our galaxy that have a frequency of light that come and interact with us in a geometric pattern, right? That has an actual effect on how we move through life and reality. So space weather, solar weather, it's really no different. So it's exactly the same, actually. So it's important to understand this. So thankfully, this is all starting to taper, and maybe we get, for just a moment, a little bit of breathing room. And new moons, that's usually the case, right? We come into the balsamic moon, everything is distilled down. We come into this moment of quiet with the new moon, right? It's darkness, it's quiet. The seeds are being planted in the soil, right? Nothing is really stirring yet. It is a moment of stillness, thankfully. So I'm certainly appreciative of that, and I would encourage you to cultivate that for yourself. Okay, so that's my spiel about the solar weather. So I'd like to bring up a couple more images of the Heyoka here, just to, just to kind of orient. So we already looked at this image, of course, and let me show you a different one here. Like I said, where did you go? I think what I need to do here, hold on one second. There we go. Yes, we're gonna move on to a different image. Here we go. This is, actually, this image is from, hold on, my tabs are not, sorry guys. Okay, here we go. This image is actually from an X post, just random X posts that I found, and I really liked the post because it was from a Lakota member and talking about the Heyoka. So I'm not sure if that's interesting. The shoes, I didn't even notice that till now. So again, you see the contrast within. He's kind of got the horns, this idea of the sacred clown. And when we start talking about the actual new moon, Alpha Centauri star seeds, I want you to keep this imagery in mind, because this is something, again, that I think is really worth cultivating within each of us as we go through the next 4 weeks with this Scorpio new moon, conjunct a retrograde Mercury, right? Talk about a trickster, Mercury, and it's being retrograde back down the rabbit hole. It's like we're kind of getting pushed back down the rabbit hole of our own selves in some ways, in order to be like, okay, like we aren't quite done down there yet of really getting to the bottom of ourselves and what is going on down there. We've had a significant purge, and those types of events that we're, the solar weather, 3i Atlas, the fact that they are inextricably linked, in my opinion, they're not comfortable by any stretch, right? And neither is the experience with the sacred clown for the clown or the person who's going through the healing, right? Because you're forced to deal with the contrast that you often will just push away or ignore or pretend isn't there, or just let you, just lead you around. That also is a possibility. So this is another image of the Heyoka. And let's see. This is the one that I found for the Wikipedia entry for Heyoka, and this was a drawing done by a Lakota elder in like 1880 of a vision of the Heyoka. And you can see again, he's got the horns. He's riding what I'm assuming is either a bull, it's probably more of a buffalo, right? If we're going to talk about Lakota. He's got this staff, which I think is really interesting, and he's got the red and blue, and it made me think about the red and blue Kachina, right? With the Hopi, and the fact that there's been a lot out there recently about the red and blue Kachina being connected to Three Eye Atlas, the fact that its color has shifted to blue and sometimes it's red. So I noticed that as well. Everything else in this image is blue, right? Which is about the highest frequency you're going to get of light, visible light, other than like indigo and violet. And then the red also being the root chakra, or the lower end of the visible light spectrum. So that's just, you can go on the Wikipedia page for Heyoka. You'll see this image. This was actually drawn by a Lakota elder in a vision. So I thought that was interesting. Let's see if there's any. Oh, yes, there's one more image, and this is going to be part of our transition over to the. Oh, did I close it? Hold on one second here. There we go. So now we're going to talk about Alpha Centauri. Okay, so let me make sure that we are actually sharing this image. I was sharing it. Here we go. The problem with having all these tabs open is that it's slow. The computer can only process here we go. Can only process so much at a time. Okay, so this is an image of the constellation of Centaurus, which is where we're going to find the star Alpha Centauri, or Rigel Kent, which is in the front knee of the Centaurus constellation. So a little bit of background about the star Alpha Centauri. Some of you may already know this. Alpha Centauri is actually a triple star system. There are two stars that are very much like our own star or sun, and they're in a very close relationship with each other in a binary. But then there is Proxima Centauri, which is a red dwarf that is further off, and that actually is the star that's technically closest to us. So the Alpha Centauri triple star system is our closest stellar neighbor. It is the closest star system to ours. It's like 4.5 light years away. So it's represented by this big old star in the constellation of Centaurus, or the centaur, right? Half beast, half human, right? They're very magical beings. And this, like I said, it's our closest stellar neighbor. So just a couple of notes here about this fixed star from a astrological perspective. If we're going to look at fixed star astrology for Alpha Centauri, and like I said, it's 3 different stars, and so they have their own, they have a little bit of different nuance depending on which star you're talking about. But overall, Alpha Centauri has, these basic influences here that have to do with, great enthusiasm for any type of cause, right? And whatever the cause is that you embrace. Now think about the sign of Scorpio, right? This is the realm where power is generated through some type of relationship. Libra is the relationship itself, right? The form and the structure and the balance of the relationship, the scales. And Scorpio, death, birth, regeneration, but it's really the power that's generated in the relationship itself. And so, oftentimes the concepts of sacrifice come into the Scorpio realm, because what you're really sacrificing is your own personal drive and ego to the relationship itself. And it generates some power more than what you individually could generate in yourself, right? And it doesn't matter what the relationship necessarily is. It's the idea that you put yourself into. And so the sacrifice is about oftentimes sacrificing your own desires or your own ego and offering it into the relationship in order to generate power or generate trust, right? That's the other aspect of Scorpio or the eighth house in astrology: trust, intimacy, and betrayal. Okay, but there is a cause that we will, that Alpha Centauri represents, that you are very enthusiastic about the causes that you embrace, and tend to be quite self-sacrificing. So if you have anything prominent in your natal chart, your progressions, other charts, that is 29, 30 degrees, 29 degrees, 30 degrees, and 0 degrees of Sagittarius, so 29, 30 Scorpio, 0 degrees Sagittarius, you're going to be an Alpha Centauri starseed. And these are the attributes that really go along with this, right? Self-sacrificing about whatever those causes, and not in a martyr type of way. It's because you can afford the expenditure, especially if it's well aspected, right? If it's in a good aspect to other things in your chart, because it indicates a very bountiful flow of energies from within, and more importantly, from Great Spirit, right? However you want to express it. It's not your energy that you are giving, because anybody who is in any way empathic, again, Pleiadian starseeds, knows that if you're giving your energy, like, you're depleted immediately, right? Or over time, right? This is about connecting into that which is an infinite flow and bounty, which is how you practice Reiki, for instance, right? Reiki is not you giving your energy or you manipulating other people's energy for healing. It is about you being a channel or a conduit for Great Spirit or divine energy moving through, and you resonating like a tuning fork. So it's the same concept here for Alpha Centaurian starseeds. So, again, being very enthusiastic, really embracing a cause, being very self-sacrificing about it, because the energy coming for that is coming from a place of that is infinite, right? It's coming from source, basically. Now, and that goes for the Heyoka energy. Now, what's really interesting is this star rules 2 inches below the navel. Well, where is that? Well, that's your sacral chakra, right? That is the place where your creativity and your healing energy is generated. That's very interesting that is the place that this star particularly rules. So that's Alpha Centauri in terms of fixed star astrology. So you just translate that out to Alpha Centauri starseeds, and that's basically one of the main traits in terms of how I read for it, is that the Alpha Centaurian starseeds tend to be very self-sacrificing in a way that is it's an infinite flow of energy. The energy that you offer into the causes that you embrace or the situations that you're engaged with are taking its energy from not only within, but from spirit, from Great Spirit, that is infinite and bountiful, right? So again, there aren't a lot of these folks. Just, in terms of my experience reading, looking at it in the chart. And so same thing with the Heyoka. Not everybody is fit or meant to be the sacred clown, because you have to connect into something deeper and more infinite than yourself and your own sense of self in order to play this role, right? Because a lot of times, especially in our society, you end up being a pariah, right? And there's a couple very notable public figures that I can think of who actually carry this archetype within them that, I don't know, take all the slings and arrows. And I've asserted, and I'm not even going to say who it is, because if you don't know, then you don't know. But I've asserted this for a long time, solely based on this person's astrology, that they really fulfill this role and do, in fact, take the slings and arrows and act as this sacred clown in order to in order to facilitate the healing at a collective level. It's pretty remarkable, actually. So this is Alpha Centauri, Rigel Kent. It's in the constellation of Centaurus. You're only going to see this in the southern sky, by the way. You're not going to see this here in the northern hemisphere. So if you're going to go try to look for it, good luck. You won't find it. You can only visually see it from the southern hemisphere. So, but it's there, and this is the degree currently that this new moon conjunct Mercury is going to be. So I'm going to bring up the chart now because there's one piece here. Not one piece. We're going to get into the chart. We're going to look at what's going on, and there is a very specific aspect pattern that is really important for us to talk about, and is part of why I think this time right now is so auspicious in terms of like all of the solar activity, the occurrence of 3i Atlas coming so close to the sun, our sun, the fact that it is going to come to its closest approach to the planet, to Earth, on the 19th of December, which is not only right there at the solstice, but is a new moon conjunct the galactic center. Ooh, I'm getting like chills on that one because I know that that's going to be, if you think that right now is intense, just wait till Christmas. And I don't know how it's going to unfold, right? I don't know how it's going to roll out, but it's going to be pretty intense. I mean, there's no way around it just because of everything else that is surrounding it, even just astrologically. So who knows what's going to happen? I would say right now, though, with the Scorpio new moon, Black Moon Lilith, here, let me just share the chart so that way you see what I'm talking, if you are, in fact, looking at the screen. If not, it's not a big deal because I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to dictate everything anyway. So this is our new moon chart for the 20th of November, which is today. You can see everything is stacked up here. Even Venus is in Scorpio. And if you remember last month or 2 weeks ago when I did the full moon report and talked about how Venus in Scorpio, how it was going to be really difficult. And she does not like to be in Scorpio because we want to be comfortable because Venus rules Taurus, right? She's kind of the representative in some ways of the Pleiadian starseed nature because that is where you find the Pleiades right now, is in the last degrees of Taurus. And so being opposite of her home territory in Scorpio, it's very difficult to be in communion with what is when what is so deep and dark and murky and uncomfortable and things we want to turn away from, right? We want to turn away from our shadow self. We don't want to often acknowledge it. And so Venus in Scorpio has been, it's been very... it's very easy to kind of get lost in fantasy land here with Venus and Scorpio because it's so much more easy to deal with in reality when Venus is in Scorpio. So, and I remember saying that, and lo and behold, here we are. But also, as you can see, Mercury, the new moon, Lilith, all stacked up in Scorpio. Now, however, and everything opposite Uranus, like what we talked about. So that has its own just trigger constantly. Anything opposite Uranus is going to trigger something massive in terms of change. And, especially Uranus in its retrograde, it's a lot of this internal changing, this internal disruption, this internal flashpoint out of what has been, right? What has been the tradition? What has been something that we have inherited in terms of a collective habit or a resource or just, physical reality. It's, what we're comfortable with, what gives us a sense of security. These are all these Taurus themes here, and they are changing us from the inside out. And a lot of that is, it's bringing us face to face with our own abyss. And this new moon is about really facing and accepting responsibility for the karma of our actions and taking responsibility not only for it, but making the commitment to to right the ship, so to speak, whatever that means for each of us, right? But that requires that we are very honest with ourselves, that we're willing to tumble back down that rabbit hole and really go searching for the truth. And that is going to manifest in lots of different ways for different people. And I really do feel like whatever Three Eye Atlas is, doesn't matter what you believe it is. The point is that it has had an impact, and that impact has manifested, I believe, in this, this surge of solar activity that is actually doing us good, but is in fact purging a lot of stuff out and forcing us into this position. Just like the Heyoka, right? It's just, doing everything contrary. The devil's advocate, so to speak, right? It just pisses you off constantly to have to be like, stop arguing with me or whatever, just as an example. But that is exactly the type of dynamic that is necessary in order to really understand ourselves. So you can see that the new moon's all stacked up opposite the Pleiades. Everything is opposite Uranus. And the thing that really stabilizes this, in my opinion, I mean, it's pretty obvious. You can see it right here, is this grand water trine with all of the late Scorpio energy, Jupiter in Cancer, and Saturn in Pisces, which is about to go direct. So yes, Saturn in Pisces in its retrograde has gone back over this territory, has been it's been a very heavy weight within ourselves. It's almost like a box we can't get out of within ourselves, but it is also, a density that is creating fortitude. And when Saturn goes direct next week on Thanksgiving Day, next Thursday, it's going to that structure is going to start expanding back outwards. It's going to start it's going to crystallize, spiritually crystallize. I mean, if we're going to talk about Pisces here, in a way that is going to stabilize us. But you see that this trine already exists, this grand water trine with Jupiter, Saturn, and all, it's either Mercury, and Mercury is going to come back and trine Jupiter and Saturn. So we will get another kind of mental stabilization here with our emotions and our feelings. But this has been very helpful, I think. I certainly have been experiencing it that way. Even when other stuff seems to be very disruptive, this water trine has been very stable for how we feel and our emotions. And for those of you who are part of the Catalyst membership, if you remember the last reading that we had, the last card reading that we had, and we talked, that King of Roses that was sitting right at the top there, right? That masculine, very authoritarian, not authoritarian, but authoritative, stable, steady, secure energy that is very lovingly focused, taking care of our emotions or taking care of that which we love. And I do get that energy from this grand water trine. And that is really stabilizing us throughout all of the disruption and this intense purge. It's not comfortable, but it gives us something to, kind of anchor into emotionally. So there's going to be, like I said, Saturn's going to station direct. Mercury's going to station direct. Venus is eventually going to come into opposition with Uranus. She's also going to trine Neptune. There's all these trines. You can see this whole new moon is in a trine to Neptune, right? And it's in the last degree of its own home sign, right? That we can visualize and manifest from that visualization. And, the sky's the limit in a lot of cases, right? But we also have to be very clear with ourselves about what it is that we want to manifest, because whatever we give our emotional energy to is going to be what we manifest, right? This is why, you can make vision boards till the end of freaking time. But if you are not emotionally invested, if you can't feel what it's like, if you can't be in the feeling of already having or doing what it is that you want, it's not going to matter how much you mentally put your energy into. You have to actually be in that feeling. And I do feel like that Neptune in this degree of Pisces is a big part of this. And there's lots of positive and stable connections to that as well. So, but the transit that I really want to talk about here, that I think is really important and represents a collective spiritual awakening, is something called a magic triangle, and it has been with us since August, really. Now today, Uranus and Neptune in their retrogrades. Now, these are the last degrees of a sign, so they're very much starseed activations, right? They're very galactic in these last degrees. It's exact. This sextile with Neptune and Uranus is exact today with this new moon. And if you really look at this chart, the connection with Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus is something called a magic triangle. So I want to talk a little bit more about this. This is something that you can look up yourself if you want to, if you're into more of the astro, if you're more of an astro nerd like me and you want to really get into the nuts and bolts of these transits and what they actually represent, you can do that. It's called a magic triangle. So this particular sextile, Uranus and Neptune, it's a 60-degree angle. That's what a sextile is. So a sextile is a very harmonious connection, but it is something we have to participate in order to get to the transformation. A trine is stable all on its own. Sometimes they make you lazy, right? And that could certainly be the case with this grand water trine, but I think that, and a little bit complacent, right? Because you don't have to, you're not pushed into anything. You're not challenged. You're just like, oh, I'm just stable. In the case of right now, this grand water trine with Saturn and Jupiter and all the late Scorpio energy, I personally think that it's been like the thing that has been stabilizing us. Like, I don't feel any complacency. Maybe some people are. I certainly feel like it's the thing that's keeping me sane. So, and focused, right? Emotionally centered as much as possible. Anyway, so this magic triangle, this like mini trine here. So this sextile occurs 5 times, Uranus and Neptune. It occurs 5 times from August 2025, which the one we just had, right, which was August 28th, was a sextile. And again, this one here, and 3 more times up until June of 2027. So we still have many more instances of this, right? This aspect of truly spiritual awakening. I mean, it's kind of baked into the cake here of Uranus sextile Neptune happened between 1965 and 1969. So, and that pretty much, is self-explanatory in terms of what was going on in the world during that time. So this transit represents spiritual awakening. Now, keep in mind that they're both retrograde and they're both in feminine signs, water and Earth. The one in August, they were both in masculine signs. Uranus was in Gemini, Neptune was in Aries, right? And so now this is much more internalized. This is a yin experience, like that high priestess in the last Catalyst membership reading, for instance. I love those readings. They don't necessarily take away from the experience, but they really have been like on point and a barometer for what is coming, just to be like, okay, here it comes. And they're usually pretty accurate. I mean, not to toot my horn here, because I'm getting the reading too. I'm just the conduit. But again, the high priestess has come up a lot in the last couple readings. And I would say this spiritual awakening energy of Uranus and Neptune now in water and earth signs is very much on the feminine, internalized experience, and the retrograde too. This type of transit really triggers people to begin to seek answers. Things like philosophical questions, that things like traditional religion or even science can't explain. That sounds a little bit like, oh, maybe we're not alone here in the universe, for instance, right? But it very much about the mystery. It's prompting people to seek answers to or to explore the mystery, right? Where traditional institutions or objective science just really can't, okay? So you may become more concerned about the future and humanity in general. I mean, spiritual awakening, but within ourselves right now. and you want to gain a deeper understanding, right? That's the thing about the sextile. Like, it's triggering a transformation. You have to participate. You actually have to seek the answers, right? You have to actually like reach out and be motivated to gain this understanding. So, but they're going to come not through conventional means, right? You're not going to just like, I'm going to find the answers online. They're going to come through dreams, through flashes of insight, maybe through conversations with people that are like-minded, right? You have a community, you have a group of people that you interact with. Maybe it is an online. I mean, if we're going to talk about Uranus ruling Aquarius, maybe there is an online type of group that you're part of that, through conversation and sharing stories and, basically comparing notes, you kind of come to this deeper understanding, but it not as much through a formal study, right? And it's very common during this transit for people to get involved in groups that are more humanitarian, especially if we're going to talk about Neptune and Pisces, that are more metaphysical, more humanitarian, maybe more esoteric, right? Not so much traditional religion, not to say that that's not possible, but it's really about getting into the deeper mysteries and getting a sense of like an awakening to them. So this is a really great time to create, especially if you've had a creative block. This type of thing really triggers like an opening here, or if you've just been feeling stagnant. Okay, so I mean, life is changing. And this is a type of transit that changes your life. It's called a magic triangle, and this is a big part of it, this sextile between Uranus and Neptune. So I really want to point that out because it's going to be happening, in various ways all through this year and 2026 and into 2027. So of course, this time period is the time period of spiritual awakening, and it's within these years, right? So it seems like it's no accident that this is when something like an interstellar object comes into our solar system and starts, wreaking havoc, so to speak. So that's the magic triangle. I really wanted to point that out because that's a big part of what's going on. And it's the same day. The sextile is the same day as the new moon, conjunct Alpha Centauri, right? So that is very important I think, to point out. So let's, wrap this up here and just kind of give an overview of what to expect over the next 2 weeks. Now, I've already talked about this whole new moon being opposite Uranus, which means that Mercury was opposite Uranus yesterday. The sun's going to be directly opposite Uranus tomorrow, right? Again, internal conflict between core identity and the need for radical change, right? When you're talking about the sun in Scorpio, Uranus in Taurus, right? This is a very Pleiadian type of thing. And the thing is, as of course, speaking as a Pleiadian starseed myself, and many of us are Pleiadians, this part of ourselves does not actually deal well with change. I'm going to be honest, right? Because the boundaries are so loose and fluid, right? You have to have the strongest heart chakra in order to stay vulnerable and open as things are changing around you and within you and, on the world stage. And so Uranus being in this position of the Pleiades in the way it's connecting to everything else is actually really good medicine, just like the Heyoka. As much as it's annoying and difficult and frustrating, and sometimes we push it away, we don't want it. It's actually kind of what we need right now. And so unexpected revelations, there are power struggles with Sun opposite Uranus, and certainly spark some rebellion, forcing you to confront and transform your deepest beliefs about security and stability. I mean, my gosh, it writes itself. And, we're in especially the retrograde, we're being asked to reevaluate quite a bit. So the other side of this, though, is that gives you that urge to try something new, try something exciting, to live your life to the fullest. Have you been feeling stagnant? Yeah. I mean, you probably have been. I think a lot of us have been. and you seek the freedom to do things your way, right? And the way that you want to do them. And you'll resist being told what to do. I mean, that's a very Uranian thing just in general. So there's nothing wrong with anticipating something new on the horizon, kind of feeling that nervous energy, sudden changes, unexpected encounters. This is all part of the territory of Sun opposite Uranus in general. So don't resist the urge, right? But you don't want to be too destructive, right? Either. You don't want to just, throw everything out the window. Odd behavior or a radical about face in someone close to you may cause anxiety, right? That could very well happen. And then arguments and separations from impatience or an unwillingness to adapt, that also could be the thing that's happening, right? People are going to act out of character. And that's part of like spiritual awakening too. If for anybody that's already been through various phases of it, you know that like you started acting really weird and people in your life are like, well, who the hell are you? What are you doing? Right? Because you're just like, ping, because it doesn't follow a formula that is predictable. It just is something, it's just a shift. And then all of a sudden you're in a whole different dimension of experience and operating from there. And people are like, what just happened? So just be aware. And also the sun trine to Neptune at the same time, right? So you become very sensitive to the environment. You become more empathic for other people. You gain a broader and deeper understanding of your place in the world, right? Spiritual ideals. You can stay true to them, right? This is a very nice and stable trine, the Sun trine Neptune. It's very spiritual. It's very uplifting. It's very artistic. It's very creative, right? These types of things are highlighted. You can just kind of get in the flow, especially a water trine with Sun trine Neptune, especially with this Alpha Centauri Heyoka energy, and specifically as being very self-sacrificing and really in being embracing your cause. This is the type of energy that will really support the Sun trine Neptune, and really give you that spiritual stability and kind of just like infusion of just like, it's completely idealistic, but at the same time, very, very infused with spirit, if that makes sense. Like you can really feel the love, let's put it that way, and become very empathic. And so you may find yourself kind of being the quote unquote Heyoka or realizing the need to be that for people close to you, right? It doesn't mean you have to like designate yourself as like, I'm a sacred clown and I'm here to agitate everybody in my life so that they grow and heal. Although a lot of times that is what happens. You might just feel the call with the Sun trine Neptune. And then the fact that it's opposite Uranus is just going to trigger you to like do something kind of wild and crazy at the same time, or respond to somebody else doing something wild and crazy at the same time. So as we move through the next 2 weeks, like I said, Saturn's going to station direct on the 27th, and Mercury is going to station direct on the 29th. So let's just look here at the day by day. I just want, the chart itself. Yep, you can see that this trine stays here this whole time. This water trine really stays here this whole time. And these oppositions to Uranus are not going anywhere. So there's constant like upheaval and that nervous energy that continues to be present here. Let's see. Now the trine is starting to dissipate a little bit. Mars has been moving through Sag. Remember we talked about the the religious crusade, right? The belief crusade that Mars is going on. It's going to be in a square to the nodes of the moon. So as much as we and I will point out here that when this happens, Mars is pretty much going to be, for the most part, sitting on the ascendant of the U.S. natal chart. So the other part of that as well is that there's going to be some, I don't know, things coming to light, things coming from the past up to the surface. And it's going to be important, I think, to really be willing, before you act on anything, right, to be able to, I don't know, be able to talk to some people, kind of, like I said, compare notes, look at where the ghost point is for this T square, which is down in Gemini, right? So, having conversation, talking, getting the information, getting the facts before you just kind of like, you know, jump on something, act on something. And there's nothing wrong with anticipating how things are going to go, but maybe you want to get a little bit more information before you really charge forward here, with this T square, with the nodes too, because this is, you know, maybe, just maybe, there's a little bit of dress rehearsal going on here. Maybe you're not really going into battle, but maybe there's a little bit of a practice run here that I feel like is happening, the week leading up to Thanksgiving. That will be interesting. I wonder what that's gonna look like out on the world stage. So, it's when we get to, so Wednesday the 26th, you can still see now Venus has come into this grand water trine, which is going to be really nice, because it's going to help stabilize her in Scorpio, because she is just not at her best she's just kind of drowning in the swamp here, and starting to pull herself out of the funk, right? It's like a lotus flower, right? That finally starting to bloom because the roots have descended all the way down through the murky water and taken root in the mud, right? And then this beautiful flower is able to is able to bloom. And this is Venus coming into these last degrees of Scorpio here. So there will be some stabilizing, I think, here. And then we come into the 27th, which is Thanksgiving Day. And this is basically when Saturn starts to station, and start moving forward. Lilith and the sun will be fully in Sagittarius at this point. Mercury then is going to station direct. Okay, I want to point out this degree because I've been seeing a lot of chatter about this online too. This degree that Mercury is going to station direct. Now, you remember we talked about this because this is where I think that there was a Cazimi, right? There was a Mercury conjunct the sun at this degree as well. And it was the degree, 21 degree Scorpio, is obeying his conscience. A soldier resists orders. And I've been seeing chatter about, out there in internet land about how the military is being, people from certain factions are encouraging the military, the soldiers to resist the orders of their commander in chief, right? So I feel like that something about Mercury coming direct at this degree is going to come to a head right, pretty much Black Friday and Thanksgiving weekend. So that's something to keep in mind too, that Mercury is going to be direct when Saturn is also direct, pretty much like right, in that trine. It's pretty loose, but it's still very much there. And that means that Mercury is going to come back and come into another trine with Saturn. Saturn is definitely the boss, right? It is, and beyond just the boss, not the manager. Jupiter is the manager, but like the boss, right? The CEO, the executive power here is what Saturn represents. So I think that coming direct, and then Mercury coming direct at this degree in Scorpio, and the fact that they're going to come into a trine with each other shortly after, I think is very important. I wonder what that's going to that's what that's going to look like. There's going to have to be some really swift adjustments that are going to have to be made, is my guess. So you can see now that Venus comes into that opposition with Uranus on the 30th. A lot more red in the chart, but then it dissipates again coming into December. And we're coming into our waxing gibbous, which means our full moon is right around the corner. And that is going to be, I believe, it looks like it's going to be on the 4th of December. So and it's going to be in Gemini. And I do believe that's actually going to be, yeah, very close to the sun will be in a T square with the nodes, just like Mars was. So it's the same degree. It's pretty much sitting on the ascendant of the US natal chart, and the full moon being in Gemini, which means it's going to be on the descendant of the US natal chart. Wow, that's going to be pretty remarkable. And so, in fact, it's going to create a grand square or a grand cross at the full moon with the nodes of the moon. And so you have this purpose that is fulfilled or illuminated, especially if we're going to talk about the essence of the U.S. as a nation, and then with the trajectory of the soul's evolution at the same time with this grand cross. You can't see it exact, but it will. Here, let's see if we can go a couple hours back and get it to make that exact square, because that's going to be, there it is, you can see it there. And if this chart showed the opposition with the nodes all the time, you would see the cross here, the grand cross here. So this is pretty remarkable. It looks like we have lots to talk about when we have the full moon coming on December 4th as well. So this, a grand cross or a grand square is a situation that you can't get out of. The only way out is through. So I would anticipate that something pretty profound at the more at the national level is going to present itself as a very frustrating and very restrictive situation that's really going to test the trajectory of the soul of all of us, and certainly of the United States, with this full moon, and really clarify and illuminate the purpose of the personality, right? The subjective personality of the U.S., because that is, oh boy, that is pretty significant to have this this grand cross in terms of the U.S. natal chart be the full moon. So, all right, friends, that is going to do it for today's, what is it? New moon forecast. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you all so very much. Like I said, the next special report is seasonal forecast. It's going to be for the upcoming solstice. It will be the new moon. So I am going to be traveling around that time. So there will be no public free new moon forecast leading up to that time. So if you do want astrology or transmission of any kind for that time period, you may want to consider Catalyst membership. Link in the description box, and you have a number of different options, a bunch of benefits that come along with your membership. You get energy readings posted to the membership site twice a month, depending on which tier you subscribe to. You may even subscribe to premium membership, and you get your own personal reading every roughly 4 to 6 weeks. You get a dedicated discount code for everything in the store, excluding the packages. But that does include the one-on-one consultations, like in real time. You can use that discount code, because I charge a lot for those, because I value my time, especially my time that I have to schedule with people. So if you want to get on a Zoom call with me in real time to ask any questions or to dive deeper into any situation or topic, that's a great opportunity to do that. And if you're part of Catalyst membership, then you get a dedicated discount code to use towards that when you see fit. So everything you need is in the description box below. Reach out if you have any questions. I don't often solicit for donations, but I did want to let you know that there are 2 options, Venmo and PayPal, how to offer a donation. My husband is about to be laid off in about 2 weeks for the season, and so it's always a pinch time for us here. And so this would be a great opportunity if you've been considering donating, if you have been really getting a lot of value out of this free content. You might want to consider giving back a little bit if you can, right? I know that it's tight for everybody right now, and that's not going to stop me from doing this particular these particular offerings. And of course, I have a day job where I'm in the trenches doing actual hands-on healing work. But anybody that's done this work knows there's only so many sessions you can do in a day, in a week. And so I'm tapped out with that too. So passive income and donations really help like get us over the hump when things are really tight. So if you feel like, called to do so, there's an option to do that. So thank you for being here. Again, I really appreciate all of you so very much. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving if that's something that you do celebrate. And I will see you on the next transmission, which will be the full moon forecast in early December. Take care, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.